They're going to come after 6.
6.
Call the Transportation Committee meeting to order on this May 8th, 2017 at 7:45. Mr. Dawson, will you say the prayer?
My cousin. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for all the blessings you bestowed upon us. We thank you for the giftings that you've given us. For your word said, if you want to be great in your kingdom, let you be the servant. So we thank you for the opportunity of serving the people of Ascension. We pray for your wisdom and guidance as we do the people's business. And we thank you for all the success that you would grant us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Please make a note. I'm going to move agenda items 10 and 11. Make it 6A and 6B because we have speakers, presentation on that. Don't want them to sit too long. We have a public comment period, 3 minutes. I know we have one person signed in. If you haven't signed in, please do so at the front and submit your card, and I will call you on the proper item. And chairman's reports, I have nothing to report at this time. We will move on to item number 5, acceptance of minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objection? None? So moved. Item number 6, discussion and reworking and increasing specificity to the ULDC Appendix 4 subdivision regulations, Section 17-405-1, relative to improving traffic impact studies required of new developments in Ascension Parish. Jerome Fournier.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'd like to introduce on behalf of the committee and the staff, Mr. Michael Sanji with CSRS. They're our engineering review agency, and he has a couple of prepared statements, and we'll introduce the traffic engineer who will get into detail on this. All right.
Thank you, Jerome. Michael Sanji with CSRS. Lawrence is going to pass out some handouts while I'm introducing. As you know, CSRS is the third-party review agency for the development and subdivision submittals, which includes a traffic impact study. We were requested to come and present or asked to put together a presentation regarding the policy and content and how these studies are performed. I think to initiate discussion, we thought it would be best, as opposed to hearing from us, to bring a consultant who does this work day in and day out. We talked about it and asked Lawrence Lambert with Vectura if he would be willing to come and speak to you. Lawrence has done a few studies for Ascension Parish, but more importantly, he has done studies across the state of this magnitude, but also much greater magnitude. He worked with ABMB, which was acquired by Stantec most of his career. He's done traffic modeling most of his career. He has the PTOE designation. So we thought it would be best to hear from him, to let him explain the policy and somewhat the process by which they go through to analyze these subdivisions, and then we'll all be available to answer questions. So Lawrence, if you would, I think you gave him a handout. I'll let you take it from here.
Sure. Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I don't know if the PowerPoint's going to be put up or not, or we could just go through the hard copies. But so the agenda we want to go through tonight is just kind of review your traffic impact policy. What are the thresholds? What determines the limits of study? Go through the measures of effectiveness that we use to kind of quantify these studies. It's called level of service. I'll go into detail of what that is. And then I know this might be a little dry, but we'll walk through kind of the steps of the traffic impact study. You know, how are they scoped? You know, once we understand the scope, how do we how do we get to the end result and recommendations, and then we can open it up for questions and answers. And I'll be as quick as I can. I know we're short on time tonight, but so your ordinance calls for several thresholds based on the number of trips that a development is projected to put out. And so what we do is in a scoping meeting, we would say, all right, you've got a certain amount of single-family residential lots. It's going to throw out 10 trips, 100 trips, 400 trips. And so with that estimate, thank you.
That's not the right one.
Different PowerPoint. That's okay. So if you have less than 40 trips, which would equate to 33 single-family lots, you would be at a threshold 0. So essentially, we would just do that as a trip generation. You would say, all right, we're going to have 20 trips in the PM peak that are going to go out onto the road, and then we would go out and take pictures of the proposed driveway to make sure there are no sight distance obstruction. Like, is the driveway in a curve that may not be safe? You know, you can't judge if you have a good acceptable gap coming out of the driveway. So that's the purpose of these sight distance evaluations. Moving to the next threshold, you're between 40 and 75 trips. That would add a level of service analysis for just the driveway, the egress coming in and out of the development. And then moving to the next threshold, 75 to 400 trips, which is a pretty broad range there. And again, the upper limit of that would be 440 single-family residential lots. You would look at everything you did in the stage, threshold 0 and 1, and then you would also look at the adjacent intersections. Typically, we want to look at a significant intersection. So not just like a dead-end T intersection road, but we want to go to the nearest signalized intersection that would be impacted. And then we would also look at crash data. We would typically, if it's a state route, that data is available from DOTD, and we can pull that into the report. And then we would also do a segment analysis. So most of your congestion is focused at the intersections, but we still want to do a corridor level of service abutting the proposed development. And then the third threshold, which is over 400 trips, which is a very large development. To my knowledge, I think you guys have had one threshold 3 study, and that's where you really come together and you look beyond the corridor that this development is entering. So you might look at parallel routes, or you might carry these trips out to the interchanges at the interstate, those types of things. And I do want to note that parallel to what you guys do, DOTD has their own traffic impact policy. And they just have one threshold, and that's 100 trips. So if you're below 100 trips, they don't get involved in the study. You still have to pull a driveway permit from DOTD. You know, once the development's approved and they want to pour a driveway, they have to get a permit. But below 100 trips, that's really all that's involved with DOTD. Above 100 trips, you do have to do a traffic study. It's reviewed by the district traffic engineer. And a lot of times they work, you know, in concert with the local, you know, the city or the parishes, you know, in East Baton Rouge, they work with the traffic engineer there, and they kind of get on the same page as to, you know, what are the recommendations, how do we want to handle this development. So I just wanted to point that out, that DOTD, you know, there are a lot of state routes in Ascension Parish, and that's where DOTD comes into the picture when it's over 100 trips. So the next page is the level of service. This is how we kind of measure how an intersection is operating or how our roadway is operating. And it's similar to kind of grades in school. We go A to F, other than there's an E in there. There wasn't an E letter grade in school. A being the least congested, and F being very congested. And you can assign levels of service for these roadway segments, which is which you see on your left, and on the right, there is an unsignalized or a stop controlled intersection. And you have basically what you call stop delay. So the average person that pulls up to that stop sign, if they experience 5 seconds of stop delay, you know, waiting for a gap to cross the street, then that's an A. And that's what these numbers are in that middle column, like less than 10 seconds, all the way up to greater than 50 seconds. So if your average driver has to spend more than 50 seconds at a stop sign waiting for a gap, that's considered a level of service. And that's for a stop sign. You flip the page. Traffic signals are a little different. They have a little bigger range of stop delay, less than 10 being A. Level service D being 35 to 55. And I want to kind of point out level service D because I know, when we're in school, we want to make an A. Everyone's shooting for an A, but D is for diploma, right? And that is what we design for in the future. So if we're going to do a project, and DOTD says we want to do a 20-year analysis or a 5-year analysis, they are shooting for a level service D. And I know it seems kind of counter to, well, why not do an A? Because an A is way overshooting the mark. You're spending too much money, you're adding in too much capacity, when a level service D gets just about everybody through every light cycle. Okay, it starts to feel a little congested. There's more cars on the road, but that's what we shoot for, is a level service D. And so that's kind of a clear mark. Now, level service E is where things start to break down, and you start to see congestion. And then F, of course, is congestion. It is gridlock. Okay, so it's kind of important to note that. So when we do a traffic study, we estimate the generated trips. We figure out which threshold we're in. And let's say it's a threshold 2 or even 1. We have to go out and we have to collect traffic data. And there's a couple different ways to do this, but typically we'll put cameras out, film the intersection, and then count it in the office. And we'll get turning movement counts for the AM peak and the PM peak. And we'll typically count anywhere from 2 to 3 hours to make sure that we have that peak hour. We don't just go count 1 hour. We get a full window and we see the traffic going up and down, and then we identify that peak hour. And that's what you see here in this existing traffic data. These intersections with how many lefts you have, how many rights you have, and all of that. Then the next step is to grow the traffic, right? The development isn't going to be open at the time of the study. We typically say it's going to take 2 years to kind of get everything open. And so we grow the traffic, normally at 2% per year is kind of a standard that we use. Now, the next thing we do is we do that trip generation and we figure out how many are coming in, how many are coming out. Then we distribute that traffic, and that's the next page. We distribute that traffic on the network based kind of on what's the origin destination. You have most of your residential's over here, you have a work center over here. People are going to the work center in the morning and returning home in the afternoon. So we develop these kind of travel patterns, and a lot of times it's directional. It's heavy in one direction in the morning, and it's heavy returning in the next day. And this is where our developers get a little frustrated with us, is we take their full build out and we put it on the network, and they say, well, we would love to have 100% sellout day one. But that's how we do it. We don't take the development and string it out over the 10 years that would probably, have, depending on the size of the development. We don't stagger that. We take all their trips and we put it into that opening year. And then we determine what the levels of service are. So this next page, level service summary and recommendations, you can kind of see where we have each of the intersections, and this is just a study outside of the parish, where we have levels of service B, level service C. And if you look at that third intersection, LA 445 and LA 22. And you kind of start going left to right, and you can see where in 2019, no build, for that southbound movement, we had 18.5 seconds of delay, and that's a C. And then at full build, it jumped up to 47.9 seconds, E. So that was a T intersection that had just one lane. So if you pulled up to that stop sign, if you wanted to make a left or right, you're in the same lane. So we recommended a southbound right turn lane. So now you have a left and a right turn lane, and you look to the right under that table 8, you can see where the level of service is actually a little better than it was before. Well, it's a little better in the PM, it's still a C in the AM. So what we're trying to do is restore that impact to where it was before. And again, the level service E, that's where things start breaking down. That's a sensitive point. That's kind of, you're crossing the line of really putting some congestion on the system that wasn't there before. So that's where we come up with these recommendations to put that back in. These traffic studies are done scientifically. We use the Institute of Traffic Engineers procedures. The levels of service are developed by the Transportation Research Board. That's a group out of Washington, D.C. that sets policy that every state engineering Department of Transportation uses to assess their studies. You know, I, as a traffic engineer, use the same procedures for this traffic impact study that I do for the DOTD. Most of my work is for DOTD and the parishes. You know, there's nothing different that I do in terms of my procedure or my analysis that I do for a private developer for the state or a parish. So those procedures are very standard. A traffic impact study that I submit, you could take every piece of data in there and redo your own study on the side. You have everything you need to reproduce the study, recreate it. We are even in situations where the client wants to see our electronic files. You know, you were talking about earlier how there's a drainage models, we have traffic engineering models and software, and there's different levels of sophistication and cost on those traffic software packages. But you know, if an agency has that software package, we're happy to hand it over and say, check under the hood. You know, look at our study. So, you know, all of this stuff is out in the open and transparent and follows the best management practice that's used, you know, statewide, nationwide. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or any discussions that you guys want to have.
Okay, I'll open up for discussion and questions. Councilman Lambert.
Yeah, Lawrence, and you hit on it. I think our biggest issue is our intersections, you know,
Yes,
as
sir.
far as bottleneck, and we're trying as a group up here to try to improve these intersections and roundabouts and wherever and it's all about the money, you know, trying to get it done. But we have some funding coming available, and I think that is a big plus. I don't know what the parish is doing, Jerome, right now, are they following this plan, or is this something that we want to adopt? Because it sounds, you know, is every engineer or every firm doing it the same way, I guess?
Yes, pretty much so.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
okay,
And they're following the policy guidelines that Lawrence had outlined before.
okay.
Given the level of density or
Right.
build-out that occurs within each project.
And like you said, it's a pretty good format to follow and do everyone the same and be consistent with it, yeah.
All right, the thresholds Lawrence laid out that is your policy.
That is our policy,
Has
okay.
been for,
Okay.
ever since the policy was adopted.
Appreciate it, Mike. That's all I have for now.
Councilwoman Kaza.
So just for clarification for me, transportation traffic impact studies are standardized not only across Ascension Parish, across providers, but across the state and across the country. Is that safe to say?
Yes, there are guidelines that I, as a traffic engineer, use from, like I said, the Institute of Traffic Engineers puts out handbooks and guidebooks and things like that for us to use, and it goes through that procedure that I just outlined to you.
Do you find, if the chair will indulge me several questions, do you find that our guidelines utilized in Ascension Parish by Ascension Parish providers, be they independent or provided by the or working for the parish, use any different standards than anybody else?
No, your standards are very common practice.
They're the same.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So what I'm trying to get to, and I mean, I have seen in the media, I have heard people say, this traffic study isn't worth the paper it's written on. Okay? Is that what you believe?
Do I believe they're worth the paper they're printed on? Yes, I
Yes.
do.
Okay. So, is there anything that we can do that is acceptable in standardized practice across our country? Is there anything we could or should do, in your opinion, to improve upon these standards, and can we do that? I mean, is that acceptable practice for a public body in a local community to say, I'm going to take what is standard practice all over the country, and I'm going to make mine different. I want to impact certain people or things. I want things to come out my way. I want it to say what I believe.
Yeah, I mean, you know, as I mentioned, there's a process to be followed, and when we submit the report, it's open for anyone to look at. I know you don't have a traffic engineer on staff, but, you know, other cities or parishes that do, that person typically receives the report and verifies that the process was followed. I think, and this is just my opinion here, you know, it's not the study, it's not the process, it's the recommendations. And what do you do with funds that are collected, things like that? Having a master plan or a prioritized project list, once you accumulate enough money, what is going to give you the best return on your investment? Because when you have a threshold 1 or threshold 0, you're not, especially with threshold 0, you're not doing any calculation whatsoever in terms of, you're not taking the traffic and placing it on the roadway network. You're just saying, we're gonna throw off 25 trips. I mean, that's kind of telling you nothing. I mean, it's telling you that it's a small development, but outside of that, you can't really do anything with it in terms of a recommendation on, well, how do we fix this intersection? So, but when you get to the larger thresholds, then you do have quantifiable data. You are pulling in specific intersections. You're assessing what the level of service is now and then what the impact is. And if you had just say like a plan for a corridor and all these developments that came in, whether it's their impact fee or whatever, rolled up into these recommendations, I think you would be better served that way. Having it feed into a master plan rather than having all of these separate studies that really don't point to one specific goal or plan.
So let me follow up on something you just said.
Sure.
We have a threshold 0 review on these small developments.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that, once again, is that standardized? Is that typical? Or could Ascension Parish say, we want to do more with that threshold 0, we want to lower that to something less and get more data in order to enable us to better spend our impact fee money that we have implemented?
Yeah, you could. I mean, again, I wasn't involved with the setting of these thresholds or these numbers.
Who does that?
It's in your ordinances, so I'm not sure who put it in the ordinance or how long it's been there. But, you know, just outside looking in, they probably did it that way just because 10 cars isn't going to move the needle on an intersection that has, you know, 800 cars going through it. It probably wouldn't show you an impact or any kind of noticeable impact. So why spend the money to say, hey, we're moving this intersection's delay by 1/10 of a second?
So let me ask you, as a follow-up to that, you believe that our current thresholds as they exist are reasonable and standardized and in conjunction with standardized thresholds across the country?
I think they're reasonable.
I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, I do.
Are they
I looked at it.
Are they similar to other communities of our size?
Livingston has the exact same thresholds. So, you know, I know that's a peer parish, but that, you know, it is something that's being done in other places, if that's your question.
Yeah, that was certainly it. Okay, at this time, that's all the questions
Sure.
I have, but I reserve the right to jump in there again.
Jeremy?
If I could, let me make sure I understand correctly. So if we have subdivisions, if we had 10 subdivisions and they were 68 lots, all of them were 68 lots or less, we would not do this intersection evaluation.
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Secondly, I presume there are discrete places where you go from a B to a C and a C to a D, correct?
Yes, sir.
So, you know, we could also have a subdivision that had, say, 100 lots in there, and, you know, like I used to make low Cs, but they would go from a low C to a high C, if you will, and that would require no improvements.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So do you see anything now, we instituted the traffic impact fees, and that's supposed to make everybody pay for their usage, whether they have 20-lot subdivision or 2,000-lot subdivision.
Correct.
So do you have any recommendations as far as, and I'm trying to understand the master plan part of this, is that would that help if you had something, a master plan or a master transportation plan that, or a transportation model, I guess, is more what we're talking about here. Is that correct?
Yeah, your MPO has a model. It's a macro model. It's a high level model. I find that it being such a high level, the details kind of get lost at these intersections. So my recommendation would be to look more on a corridor level, and you can draw the limits yourselves. And you could kind of, you have watersheds. You could have a traffic shed. Any development within this traffic shed feeds into this corridor or affects this corridor. And that way you are tying, whatever money's collected or any mitigation that's being proposed ties into your plan for this corridor.
Okay.
And there's certain things like we talked about, roundabouts. You're not going to pay for a roundabout with one development.
Right.
It's just not going to, they're just too expensive. But like your example, 10 smaller ones could roll up into that type of a recommendation. But you need to have that identified ahead of time, because this study isn't going to say, well, we should do a roundabout for these 50 lots.
Right.
So
So if we have something that's a model that identifies the corridors and does some evaluation on the corridors as we approve these subdivisions, then we have an opportunity to have them pay for their impact on it or use that.
Yes, sir.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Thank
sir.
Any other questions? I've got a couple questions.
Sure.
We talk about the peak hours, and one thing that's always concerned me is an after study, if there's an actual accuracy to, this is what they said the peak hours would be. Have we had any subdivisions that were studied after they were completed to find out how accurate it is?
No, to my knowledge, nobody has done that.
Some sort of, to calibrate to make sure it's accurate.
Yeah, nobody's done that.
So, I mean, at this point, we don't know if the peak hour studies are accurate, and therefore we don't know if the traffic studies are accurate.
Well, the only thing you can really control is the driveway, right? If you say, we want to measure the impact of this driveway on this intersection, you have other things impacting that intersection that aren't 100% directed towards that intersection. So you could go count the driveways if you wanted to say, like the trip generation, we say this development's going to develop 50 trips. The trip generation is based off of the group I described earlier, ITE, Institute of Transportation Engineers. They get surveys from all over the country. Like single-family residential has about 350 data points. 350 subdivisions, actually did as you just described, went in after it was built and counted counted their driveways, and then submitted that data to ITE, and then ITE does their own statistical analysis of how reliable is this as a predictor for future development. And single-family residential has one of the highest statistical reliability scores you can get, because they know that's probably the #1 land use category in that manual that you buy. So they want to make sure that one's a good predictor. So they put a lot of time and effort to make sure that those numbers are good. But you certainly can come back behind and say, you said you're going to put 60 trips and you had 80. I mean, that you can certainly calibrate it for your local conditions.
Yeah, and wouldn't that make a difference, though, in overall traffic conditions? If it was either higher or lower?
It wouldn't make, well, are you talking about, I mean, if it was actually indeed higher than what you said it would be, I don't know how you would come in and fix that other than maybe raising the traffic impact fee. Like if it's based on, just make a number up, $200 per trip or whatever, and you were 20 trips higher than we thought, then we can assess you the difference. You could do it that way. I will say one thing that's a little tricky about that is with retail and service type land uses, there's a phenomenon called pass-by trips. And it's, think of like your dry cleaners or your pharmacy. You don't drive across town to a certain CVS, you drive to CVS, that's on your way home. Well, you were already making that trip, right? I work at point A and I live in point B, and I'm driving from point A to point B, and I need my prescriptions. You're more than likely going to pick a pharmacy that's convenient to you. You're not going to make a trip across town. So that's what we call pass-by. You don't count those trips on the network because they're not new trips. You count it on the driveway, and you make sure the driveway works, and you fully account for all those trips on the driveway, but you don't add that trip to the intersection because it was already there. So it gets a little tricky when you talk about retail and those pass-by trips, you know, in terms of the network. But single-family residential, a new house is a new trip. I mean, you're putting a new car on the road with a new rooftop, and so that is something you can 100% count and assess whether or not, you know, you were accurate on your estimate. But it is an estimate. I do want to emphasize that. I mean, this is not a crystal ball. This is based off of this data that ITE collects, and that it's generally accepted by all traffic engineers that it's a reliable predictor. But it's not going to be 100% spot on.
And that's something I'd probably like to see in the future, is that we consider doing that, because right now we don't know. We've heard it before, these aren't worth the paper they're written on. That I think would give us a better idea of the value of the paper or the value of the study,
Sure.
one of the two. As our impact studies or traffic impact studies are done now, do they account for subdivisions that are approved but not yet built?
Yeah, and they should, and that's where you have a scoping meeting. You know, let's say you hire a traffic engineer from Texas, and he doesn't understand what all has been approved. You have to tell him that, or her that. So you have a scoping meeting, you say, you know, this project was approved, this project was approved, you need to account for this in your baseline traffic data. And so that would be your, what I call the no-build condition, because it's already been approved, and it should be in your base conditions. But you guys have to tell us that. As a traffic engineer, I can't hunt down all the approved developments. When you have a scoping meeting, you know, whatever, you know, the planning commission, whatever needs to say, you need to account for these studies, and here's the traffic study for you to use.
Mr. Fournier, are we doing that at this time?
Yes. When we have our pre-app meetings, we basically scope out what we're going to be doing, given the size of the project, you know, these different things. So yes, we are accounting for those. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my understanding. And I should add, too, that there are a couple of firms that have been doing this, and they have accumulated over time this database of all the projects that have been occurring in Ascension Parish. So they've got that built into their formulas already. So when they come up with a new project, they're adding that to an existing database that they've had.
Now, you had mentioned before, like, corridor. Would that be different than our threshold that we're using now if we were to judge things on corridors for that?
Well, the corridor would be broader, in my opinion. You know, I think, you know, that's pretty standard if you have a decent-sized development to look at the adjacent intersections. But those two intersections could be located in a 10-intersection corridor, and you have your projects already kind of identified. And so when you say, all right, well, what you're looking for a couple things with a traffic study. So if you say that there's, quote, no impact, you're collecting a traffic impact fee. So the situation the gentleman described over here, you know, we're not getting death by 1,000 cuts. All these little developments are, you know, adding up to something significant. So to me, that's what a traffic impact fee does for you. It kind of neutralizes that phenomenon. But then when you get to these larger developments, they may have a specific and pronounced impact on a movement or even the overall intersection. And so that's when you go in and recommend an improvement to go from single lefts to dual lefts, or a right turn lane, or go from a stop sign to a traffic signal. Those are the types of things that we're looking for when we start getting congestion. So if you don't, so then let's say you look at those two intersections and there's really not a big level of service drop, but it's in this corridor, then you could take those funds as traffic impact fees and just say, all right, well, we're going to take that $100,000 or whatever it is and assign that to these projects that we've identified, and I'm just going to make this number up, 10 intersections. 10 intersection corridor, but it would be bigger than that 2 intersections defined in your threshold 2.
And, I think what I understand, that the standards are pretty common. The way the studies are done are pretty common. We don't know how accurate they actually are unless we do a study to really test that in our area, because other areas may be different. But one of the bigger differences is the actions that are allowed based on the impact study. Is that something that's consistent with all areas?
What do you mean by actions?
Well, if we find that there is an effect on a road, a adverse effect, that according to our impact, our traffic studies, we can have a reduction in the projected vehicle trips per day, dedication of additional right-of-way for future roadway improvements, rerouting of traffic and proposed access points serving the proposed project, or participation in funding transportation facilities, including signals, roadway, and intersection improvements.
Yeah, that's consistent with standard practice.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at a proposed form which has 12 different options. Reducing the size and scale of the density of the development to reduce traffic generation, divide the project into phases to authorize only one phase at a time, dedication of right-of-way for street improvements, construction of new streets, expand the capacity of existing streets, redesign ingress and egress points to reduce traffic conflicts, alter the use and type of development to reduce peak traffic, reduce background existing traffic, eliminate the potential for additional traffic generation from undeveloped properties in the vicinity of the proposed development, integrate non-vehicular design components, pedestrian bicycle paths to reduce trip generation, implement traffic demand management strategies, carpool, van programs, flex time to reduce trip generation, recommend denial of the application for development for which the traffic analysis is submitted. Are any of those out of the ordinary?
No, those are all very standard recommendations.
Okay. Or any of, we don't have all of those. Are we behind the times?
Well, I don't want to use that term, but I mean, they're
Old-fashioned?
all of those are tools in the toolkit to, manage congestion. And certainly mixing of land uses, and this is where you can use the carrot or the stick. And your land use is, if you have a mixed-use development, just like I described earlier, going from point A to point B, well, if you co-locate point A and point B on the same piece of property, then you've just taken that car off the road. And so that is certainly something, as a planning commission, you can incentivize to shorten or eliminate these trips. And so if that's not in your toolkit, I would certainly strongly urge you to put that in there.
What I'm looking at, have you had a chance, there was a proposed traffic analysis document. Have you had a chance to analyze that? That talks about collector streets, I found it in the package. Local collector streets and different requirements.
Do you know what the name of the document is?
It's a draft of work in progress to improve existing ULDC traffic impact provisions.
Was that done by?
Looks like it was the former planning director, Ricky Compton.
I don't know if I've seen that document.
Okay. Because it looks like it's most of the analysis is based on arterial streets, collector streets, and local roads.
Yeah.
Kind of using that corridor program that you had talked about to get a better analysis of what traffic impact is really going to be versus just the single intersection.
Right.
Is that something you would recommend?
Yes, I would definitely recommend looking at a system approach. Absolutely.
Councilman Satterley, I know this was close to your heart. Do you have any comments you'd like to make?
This was unexpected, but thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only comment I would make is I totally agree with the last line this gentleman said.
Me?
You know,
Any more questions or comments? What I'd like to do, Jerome, have you had a chance to look at this?
I don't have the document in front of me. Is it the one that was prepared by the last planning commission?
Yes.
Planning director? I have not looked at that recently, no.
Okay, what I'd like to do is have you take a look at this and give us your analysis on it.
Okay.
Because I think it fits into the corridor analysis of traffic versus just intersections.
Right.
because I know in my area, corridors are problems, and we're trying to fix that later on this evening. We're going to try and fix some of that. But I think if we take a wider and broader approach and also allow the Planning Commission and ourselves to have more remedies at our disposal, we may be able to fix some of these problems.
Okay, I'll be happy to look at that and report next
Okay,
meeting.
can we do that next month?
Sure.
That'd be great. Any other questions? Okay, then we'll move on to the next agenda item. Thank you very much, Mr. Lambert.
Thank you, it was a pleasure to be
Good
here.
presentation. Okay, what did I do with my? There it is. Okay, now we're going to move to 6A, which was formerly number 10, and that's the HNTB presentation. Mike Enlow. I didn't call you, John.
Putting up the
I'm
presentation,
teasing it.
since the secretary's not here.
Where's the secretary?
Good question.
Thank you, Bill.
Oh, Lordy, Bill, you just stepped in that one.
I'll see y'all.
Thank
in
you.
a few minutes, I'm sure.
Chairman, this is a follow-up presentation from last month's discussions with the local projects that are ongoing and also some upcoming things that we can look forward to. So I think General Basilica with HNTB is going to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here. With me as well is our Autry Sen and Jeff Burst from HNTB, Mr. Ray Hartley from a partner firm, Meyer Engineers, and Perry Franklin and James Taylor from Franklin and Associates, also a partner firm. The agenda for tonight's presentation is, I promised you that since we focused mostly on moving, getting some orange barrels out there at the first presentation, we would give somewhat of an update on the master plan because that task has been moving forward simultaneously. Haven't paid a lot of attention to it at this point. We have, but it hasn't been the topic of discussion very much here. So I'll give you an overview of where we are with that. The second thing is we'll get some more definitions about what types of projects are, and you'll see what those look like in just a second. We're going to talk about the new program that was announced today, the Move Ascension program, and what the recap of the projects that we're recommending for those, and then a path forward as we go there. The master plan work completed to date. As some of you know, the visioning workshop that we conducted some time ago was conducted. Some of you participated in that. We outlined goals and objectives that day, and we have a final draft report that we're ready to deliver to the steering committee. We haven't had a steering committee meeting just yet, but we're prepared to do that not later than the end of this month. We do have other staff from HNTB that are coming back into the state that I promised, and we're going to do a complete laydown of all work to date on the master plan, and at that point we will be able to present that report. I've done a good bit of data collection, as you know, and we have all of that both from our partner agencies of the DOTD and the MPO, CRPC. Synthesis of the previous studies that you see, there are a lot of studies out there, and one of the things that you will see in the visioning workshop report is we have cataloged a library of every single one of the reports that we have found, and we have those now collected, and so that they're available to us to refer to. Next is the multimodal problem definition. We've been working on this and continue to work on it. One of the first things you're doing in the plan is to develop a good, accurate existing condition that's out there for Ascension Parish. And then when we say future no build, what we're really saying is if you do nothing, how bad does it get over these time horizons of 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and the worst pain points. If you don't have pain points already, which I know you do, those things will start to really reveal themselves based on the demographics and the growth trends and so forth. And so we trend to do that first, is to lay that out, and then we use the existing traffic demand models that the CRPC has at this time, and they are in the process of updating. We've laid out a format and a framework for the report. We plan to provide that as well by the end of May so that you can see it and you'll have some understanding of what do we get at the end. You'll see that and you'll have some sense for that. The next is there's a problem definition presentation that we want to make to this committee and to the leadership of the parish. And then we have stakeholder meetings that we said that we would do when those folks are back in state, and we will do that with the school board and again, others. You see the difference in the color on this chart. The next three steps in the process, you'll see on, I think the chairman has now relabeled it 6B. There's going to be a motion to go to pause at that point, to divert the remaining resources that we have available and focus in on the Move Ascension part of the initiative. But to lay it out moving forward, there is an evaluation methodology, a detailed one that goes through decision-making framework for how to make the investments for improvements to the system, performance measures that'll be laid out so that you can measure that to know what type of effect you're having for all areas of pre-construction as well as development. And then we'll have an entire laydown of the universe of possible alternatives. We'll put the report together. There are 2 public meetings that are planned. It'll be vetted with the parish, with the leadership, with stakeholders, and then ultimately accepted by the council. And so that's the update on the master plan, and again, on schedule at this point, but we have like I say, a plan here to go to pause after the second piece on this chart here. Okay. Moving on to some definitions. These are the project categories, and we want to make sure that we had a good, clear understanding of what they are. Words have meaning, and I think sometimes they get a little bit confusing, so let's talk about traffic management, which we understand this is not an accident, this sequence. We understand this to be very much a part of the priorities that the council is most interested in, moving the traffic. So the traffic management types of projects are turn lanes, roundabouts, intersection improvements. When we talk about capacity enhancement, that's real live widening. That's adding lanes, go from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. That's capacity. Safety, you'll hear it sometimes say safety widening. Let's just call it safety. That can be widening of existing lanes. That's not adding lanes, refining and rebuilding shoulders and regrading side ditches, things of that nature. And then preservation is the general term used for pavement preservation, which means overlays and that type of work. No additional lanes considered in that. The next thing we have, though, is the project stages. And I want to be clear that we're talking about a lot of pre-construction activities tonight. And those are all the activities up to the actual bid preparation for letting on a construction project. And you can see they run the gambit from feasibility to environmental clearance, design, right-of-way acquisition, utility relocation, permitting, whatever it takes to get to construction. All of those activities are considered pre-construction activities, and generally speaking, they all cost money. Second is construction, and those are all the activities beyond that where you go to a bid letting with a contractor and you have construction dollars. So we make that distinction because we are in the mode here of making recommendations where we're going to have some balance between pre-construction and construction. It's a decision that we always have to make in terms of what's the right balance, and there's always pros and cons for weighing it one way or the other, and that's the way we've laid this out. Just to refresh your memory, I got 106 projects when we did the inventory inside the parish. They break out like this: 47 at the state level, 44 Ascension Parish, which is the ones we're going to focus on today, and 15 that are in the long-range plan for the MPO. So in the Move Ascension program, initial screening criteria that we use, we're basing it on a $35 million program. That funds would be available in order to be able to invest in those. We organize the projects by the categories that I just laid out and the definitions that I just laid out. We give a lot of consideration to being able to go to speed to get to construction, take advantage of those projects that are ready or most ready now, and to facilitate the programmatic basis and the funding that might be available with state-type projects where just adding some match or whatever could move the project forward very quickly. Again, focusing on moving traffic, doing the corridor and connectivity focus. You'll see that when we show some map work as we get a little closer. Alleviating congestion. We have traffic counts and so forth that are available to us from previous studies. Improving intersection flows. We are taking into consideration the input that we got during the master plan visioning sessions. Those map exercises that we did, we will go back and vet that and take a look at those. Leverage all sources of funding that we can and make sure that we're maximizing the available funds.
and then leveraging DOTD's off-system bridge program. I know we're focused on roads, but you have got some bridges in the parish too that need attention. So the first group of projects that we're calling the immediate action projects under the category of traffic management essentially encompass the Roddy Road corridor improvements. And you can see there are many sub projects that are listed there. 4 roundabouts, the turn lanes at the various locations that you see there at LA 933 and so forth. And then 2 safety widening. I put them in there just to keep it all part of Roddy Road, so it would be one continuous flow in terms of that corridor that we're talking about. These are some of the first projects that we want to move forward with. Second list on the traffic management, there's Parker Road. There's a roundabout at 929. There's a capacity project, Ashland to St. Landry Connector, and then a safety widening also for Henry Road. Those are the projects that we consider to be the ones that would move forward first. There would be a requirement for many pre-construction activities, but then move directly into construction from there. And we are committing that these projects could be let by December of 2018. Next 2 charts talk the additional projects that we are doing additional analysis on and are under further consideration to be able to move forward on. You'll see these listed here. Again, they fall into the various categories. Many of them are traffic management, safety widening, and the like. There are no preservation projects listed on any of these. We know the preservation program is separate. Mr. Enlow and his team have got that under control. We didn't list any of those. You know about those. They're about ready to go forward with those right now and get a second contract teed up for that. This is the second chart that has other projects that are being considered. Again, there's a series of additional off-system bridges to be considered. All the projects that you see there on the right-hand column that are state, that intersect with state routes, DOTD has already got H numbers on all of those. They're not very far along, but they merit moving forward because they're prepared to put state dollars up on those projects. We, of course, did not talk about all of the DOTD projects that are moving forward, and one was let in April. There are a couple that are going in May. Wednesday of this week is the next letting, and they're continuing on based on what I reported last month. And so there's very, very aggressive program really at the state level at this point. So moving forward from here, some work that we're going to do through the remainder of May and go to pause on the master plan. Based on the number of projects that we have that intersect with state routes, and based on approval of this plan and this concept moving forward, what we want to do is have for lack of a better word, another summit with the DOT. Their attitude will change considerably when you come to the table with them and say that the parish is prepared to invest and provide match and do the engineering or do those things that are required to move those projects forward that are on their list. You won't believe how things will change in their interest in trying to help move those projects forward. But we have to know that we're committed to those, and that's why it's important at this point to make sure that we have some approval to move forward with those. We are also simultaneously working on quantitative screening and evaluation process. We talked about in the first briefing a month ago, there are criteria that are out there. We're recommending that we probably stay within the guidelines that the state uses, and then there's no question about projects that intersect with state routes or the MPO, and we can prepare that. We did not use a rigorous quantitative analysis to develop this program here. We used judgment. We used what was ready based on the information that we had. The rest of the ones that we talked about needing further evaluation, we're doing that deliberately right now, and that's the reason why we're putting more resources there. And then last but not least, we'll be ready to assign all the pre-construction tasks to the consultant design that Mike and his team have got a RFQ that's ready to go out. Should be out, I would think, by the end of the month to hire at least several, don't know how many, design consultants to do all of that pre-construction work and get them engaged. And So again, I see that happening here within the next 30 days. With them assigning projects and moving out on the pre-construction work, move Ascension becomes a reality. Subject to your questions, that concludes my update today.
Councilman Lambert.
Please.
I know we can let out these projects, but what about the right-of-way issues? I know the state has a different take on getting right-of-ways. Parish, we've been struggling on several right-of-way issues that for quite a while. And, you know, you say it let out pretty quick. What is our
Well,
avenue
again,
to get these right-of-ways a little bit more rapid?
well, we're under contract. We will have a right-of-way sub-consultant working directly for HNTB's team to move forward on right-of-way acquisition, all phases of it. And it is part of the timeline that's required. There are some, for example, you've got an off-system bridge right now that's already designed, but for the lack of right-of-way that needs to be acquired, you have several intersections that are like that as well. Those are critical components that need to be taken care of right away.
Because that's appropriate, and the property takes quite a while to do, you know.
That's right. In some cases, it does. But we're talking about being very aggressive in doing that.
You know, I feel we have a speaker on this, and I wanted you to do your presentation first.
Sure.
I'd like to let the speaker come up here, and then we can ask more questions. Jeff Pettit?
I have one question, and it's actually for, maybe y'all could answer it, or the administration. This is a $35 million plan, correct? And it's great. We need it. We probably need $350 million worth of road improvements, but this is a great start. And 25 million of that is a bond, correct?
Correct.
Where'd the other 10 million come from?
We have it in reserve funds in transportation. Y'all can answer that, but that's.
Is that where it is?
That's
'Cause
where it is.
I looked at the budget. I went through it this morning, and I couldn't identify it. Can I call somebody? Who should I call? I'll give you a call.
And just so you know, we have the reserve funds in there. Our goal is not to spend every single penny in there.
Absolutely not. I
We want to
understand
save $8 to $10 million so that in the future, if we have an emergency, we can handle that emergency.
that. Sure,
And it will constantly be replenished. But yeah, that's what we're doing.
that's what it is. So it's in reserve funds, and we still have funds in reserve.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's it.
Okay. I'm going to open it up to the general if anybody else has any more questions. Councilman Gagliardi?
I just had a question, General. A lot of these, I saw a lot of the projects are focused on safety widening, safety, whatever. We've gone to seminars and conferences. One of the sessions that we attended, a number of the council members went to, the National Transportation Safety Board was there. And they kind of led on that there was money available, there's funding available. Would there be a chance to try to get some of that funding to help
That's exactly
finance
right.
these projects?
There is separate safety funds that are available if we prepare those projects. It's exactly what we're talking about. We've already talked to the MPO about that, and those are the ones that have those, that preside over that money. So yeah, absolutely would be eligible for those types of monies. We would have to apply.
But as they sit now, we can't get that money.
They're not ready to take
We have to
advantage
get
of the
them
money.
Have to be
That's right.
ready, yeah, engineered, understand.
Councilwoman Casby?
I'll defer to Mr. Dawson
Oh,
if he has something he
didn't
wants to
see you.
say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Council. Thank you. Well, what we're doing is, and Tracy and also Mike, there is a meeting of a subcommittee of the MPO that talks about safety dollars and the utilization of those safety dollars and how they apply to different parishes. We're making sure that we attend those meetings. We're making sure that we're involved in it, talking about potential safety projects that we're also talking with HMTB about. So one, for instance, was the 929 Parker Road situation that had safety funding that was moved to another project. But in the first meeting we attended, they basically said that project is something that the safety group was interested in doing and a possibility of additional safety dollars that could be applied to it. So I assure you, we are looking at those safety funds and trying to make sure that every potential possibility of utilizing this to the program that's being developed by HMTB, that we go after those particular dollars. And we are actively at those meetings every month, making sure that we tapped in. They're also doing a big study on all the safety projects that were, in essence, approved by that group that's eligible for dollars. And Tracy has that information in the grid, and I'm sure to provide that to HMTB as well. So we're actively on board, looking very closely at that at this point.
Councilwoman Cazza?
I want to thank you for that, Ken. I mean, I had the honor and many times the frustrating experience of attending MPO meetings in the past and having directors say to us that we were not actively engaged. And so I thank you very much for your assistance on that, the administration's willingness to participate, and I encourage you to continue to do that. Because if you're not, you know, it's kind of like if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
That's exactly right. Thank you.
The other thing I wanted to mention, and I've had the opportunity, because this stuff was sent to us over the weekend, to take a look at this, and one of the projects that I'm concerned about, I think will also be of concern to Councilman Satterley, who's here, is what's the possibility of a roundabout being added to this list at 928 and 427, which would give us both ends of Bluff Road. There is one at 928 and 74, and on the opposite end, in discussions with other engineers who tell me that this is an excellent location for one, I think it would behoove us to at least investigate that possibility of adding that one to this list.
Absolutely. Writing it down.
Thank you.
Have we any other questions? Anybody else? No, geez.
I'll get you a secretary. General, thank you. I really appreciate the work that you guys put into this. I realize that, you know, some of it requires some quick response, and I appreciate that. So I'd like to just clarify for everybody, you guys will, the proposal is for you guys to be the program manager on this project. Is that correct?
There's been some discussion.
Okay. So, you know, it was my understanding that that's something that we would need to name a program manager for this. Is that your appreciation of this?
Yes.
Yeah, somebody can.
If you don't mind me interjecting and taking this one, this is more of an update. That is obviously something that we're looking forward to as the next step.
Okay.
Is really putting a push and getting these projects moving.
I was a little cart before the horse thing.
Yes, it's fine.
And, you know, this is just me, but the bridges, you know, I don't disagree that the bridges need to be replaced, but I would not like to see them in the $35 million. You know, when we talked about this being traffic improvement and capacity, you know, things to help the traffic move in Ascension. And you know, again, I think that's a separate.
Yes, sir. It's something we've been working on, just like the overlay for years, and is mainly something I think was just discussed in totality of trying to get a handle on all the things that we're trying to do in the transportation department.
Okay.
So, but I agree with you, and that's how we'll proceed, is to keep handling those
And
things
so,
in-house.
you know, I think also I don't know if somebody's available to discuss this, but, you know, we talked about the transparency of this. Is there anybody, I don't know if the general or if, you know, maybe Ken or Mike, can talk about the transparency and what our plans are here as far as tracking the projects and tracking the money spent, making this available to the public.
Yes, sir, I can try to answer that. To me, it's one of the obvious things that we need to do if we move this into a program, is have something, you know, not necessarily a dashboard, but something online that the public can get on, you guys can get on, and we can also use it as a tool to track the projects in an efficient manner. That's one of the goals, or one of the requests that I have as a program manager, if it was to come on, so.
Okay. Yes.
You know, just to add, and I agree with Mike, I mean, that's something that was very important to make sure that we had that from a project expenditure standpoint, even to a percent complete standpoint. Even we talked about having time-lapse video so that, or cameras out there, so there could be some indication of where we are. The goal is to make the public aware that these projects are going on, that the council is holding the administration and we're holding our consultants, you know, to make sure that they are looking at the dollars that they're being spent, and we're making everyone aware of where those dollars are going. So all those things have been in place. We've been discussing with our IT department about even the St. Landry Edenborn project of having cameras out there and to identify where projects are going by having signage, all those kind of things to indicate to the public what's going on. And I know you, Councilman Dawson, wants to make sure that the cost is being monitored and the progress is being monitored. We're able to account for that. So all of that are the things that we're looking at. And our program manager, project managers will be responsible for making sure that information is reported to us so we can get it back to transportation to the council.
Okay, thanks. And also, we talked about, I don't know if you remember this, Mike, but we talked about including 3127 in here, you know, because of this perhaps synergism with having a program manager, but funding that from the money that we had set aside earlier. Is
Right.
is that still a possibility?
Absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I have a couple things that I kind of like explained, because I've already heard from people that when I explained that, hey, this could actually, we're moving forward very quickly. And when I tell people it's going to take a couple of years, I get this stare of, why should it take a couple of years? That's ridiculous. This problem's been around forever. Why is it taking so long? Can you maybe from a more intelligent point of view than I would have, explain why this would take a couple of years and include right-of-ways? Because I do want to make a statement about that after.
Sure. Well, again, I think that what's so important about and exciting for the parish is that, you know, the administration, the council has taken a proactive approach you stopped talking about it. You stopped admiring the problem. You're going to put some money towards what's necessary to move the projects forward. The length of time that it takes there is you know, a process. Much like the traffic study that was done and so forth, they're step by step. If engineers are anything, they're that. They're methodical, they're organized, they're structured. And so when you talk about the life cycle of a project, it starts with feasibility. They don't want you to waste money. It needs to be a feasible project when you look at what it might cost and what the benefits are going to be. It passes muster on feasibility, it moves to environmental. You got to get environmental clearance. There's no free lunch on that nationally anywhere. You got to have a clearance. Okay, sometimes it's easy. There's, you know, environmental EAs versus a full environmental impact study. They vary. You see what you can do with the, you know, the size of the project. They're all individual. You look at them individually, and you can see, you always go with the one that will go the fastest if you can, so long as you know, you're not violating any environmental rules. NEPA is very strict. The National Environmental Protection Agency, that's a very strict process. It's all laid out. So that's two. Get environmental clearance and move forward now. And now you'll do survey and you'll begin right-of-way maps and so forth and know what you're going to have to do to acquire right-of-way. There's all the steps associated with right-of-way. You got to get titled. You've got to get an appraisal. You got to go ahead and negotiate. You got to go close. So there are many steps. Nothing easy about right-of-way acquisition. However, you got to get after it. You know, and so if you've set aside monies to go ahead and have right-of-way consultants do that work, it's very specific work. You just got to do it, and you got to do it in some sequence that moves those projects forward. Simultaneously, however, you can be doing design. And so you can begin the design of the structure on the road while there's right-of-way acquisition going on. It's going to help you then determine the survey and so forth where the utilities have to be moved to. That, too, can be done simultaneously. But there's all separate steps, you know, associated with each of those tasks. All that must be done. Design approved, reviewed, approved, all right-of-way cleared, all utilities relocated, and then you can move forward, put a bid package together to put it out on the street to have the project let to construction. It took me 6 months just to explain it just now, how long it took, you know, but that's a lot of steps. And so the only way you can finish is to start, and that's what you're doing. And so I think that this is a situation where we're suggesting to you and recommending that there has to be an investment in the pre-construction activities to get these projects moving. And in many cases, you've got federal funds, so you're going to get 80 cents on a dollar for every dollar that you're spending over here. It's not money that's going to be wasted at all. It's your match for the federal projects to get those going. So it's a very good investment. It does take time.
The reason I said that, I'd like to encourage the public to pay attention to the right-of-way issue. because a single landowner that decides they don't want to sell can hold up a project for years, and we'd like to avoid that. We'd like people to work with the parish, to work with the administration, to move forward in moving traffic through our parish. We'll negotiate a fair price, but we're not out there just taking things to be taking it. We are trying to move traffic through our parish, and this is not a single district issue. This Roddy Road corridor, there's a reason it's being done early on. It's because we have a lot of the work done. We have work done on it already. We have approval from the state and that sort of thing. And that's something that's going to move traffic. And that's our goal with this, is to start moving traffic. And we do have a lot of things, I forget what it's named now, but the additional projects under construction that in the upcoming months, as we get more information and do more work on these, we're going to start moving these forward also. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Very good. Any questions, concerns?
Yeah, one observation.
Absolutely.
I think and I want the public to know, and I hope you all will validate, that the members of this committee have said loud and clear, this cannot go at the speed of government. This has got to move. Got to move quickly. We cannot drag out this process. If it normally takes a month, let's see if we can get it done in 2 weeks. We spare if we get it done in 2.5 or 3, then guess what? We've compressed this time frame. And if we get to the end of the day, and at the end of 2 years, we've done it in 30 days sooner, that's 30 days sooner. We're not trying to be difficult. We don't have a lack of understanding of how hard and detailed and conscientious everybody has to be in each step of the process. But today, the people in my district are tired. I know everybody in everybody else's district is tired of waiting. So it is time for us to move this thing at breakneck speed that is allowed to get and still get it right.
Understood.
If I may, thank you, Councilwoman Casso.
Don't you argue with me, Mike.
I would never. But with that lead-in, I'd like to ask for the authorization from this committee to start on the projects identified in the immediate action project list, as well as authorization to continue to pursue and evaluate the additional projects list that's before you.
We have a motion.
Second.
And we have a second. The motion was by Councilwoman Casso. The second was by Councilman Lambert. Any objection? Any discussion? Any objection? None heard?
I'm not voting, I just want to make a comment.
Go ahead.
Again, Councilwoman Castro, your point is well taken, and I think that the conversation we've had with Chairman of Transportation, also Chairman of Council, and as well as you, about methods that we can do to compress the timeline. I agree with you, government has a certain process that they go through, but sometimes they said it has to take 3 months, just because everyone has said it has to take 3 months. We're looking at the process, how we can collapse it and reduce it down. That's very much on the mind of everyone that's part of this group, on the mind of HMTB, and I assure you we will do everything to reduce as much time as possible and stay legal. So again, understood.
That's what we're asking for. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank
gentlemen.
you.
Excellent presentation. I don't believe so. We don't have to do that because we don't have to do that.
Item 6B, or was that it?
Now I'm going to move on to 6B.
Can we have a little bit of discussion about what our next steps forward are?
Sure.
And so that we give the administration some direction? I think we have to get our financing in order. We have to get our program director determined. So, I mean, we're I hope going to be asking the administration to respond quickly to agenda items that need to be on the agenda to move this stuff forward. Because the last thing, after all the complaining I've done about how long this stuff takes, is for one of you to look at me and say, well, Terry, if y'all had just got it on the agenda, we'd have got it done. We don't want to hold you up. Am I,
That's
do I
correct.
speak for everybody when I say that? We do not want to be holding you up, so you let us know what we need to do, don't miss something.
Well, I have a question for Councilman Dawson, and do we need to move forward on the 35 million? But see, part of that is not even bonded out yet, so I don't think we can.
I think we need to move
On
forward
a
on
10?
10 million, moving that out of the reserve into
Okay.
available.
Yes, but not the 35, that's
No,
what I wanted
not
to
the
discuss with you, okay. So do I hear a motion
Well,
to
I
move?
think it might not just, it might not hurt to commit that, you know, we want to do the, okay. So I think I'd like to see us, move the 10 million from the, transportation reserve over into the capital project and specifically, and let that be, stewarded as a move Ascension,
And in a separate motion, we will commit to the $25 million bond money to put that towards. I'd like to keep it in two separate motions.
yeah, I agree with
In
you.
case there's any issue, since we don't have the money.
But we don't have, can we address any of that at all on this agenda? I mean, none of that's on this agenda. We've
Yep.
got to,
If I may have, maybe a clarification, I think the 35 million was maybe just that's what we've identified. The authorization that I was speaking toward was the list of projects. So I think we can discuss it more, if not tomorrow night, tomorrow's finance, correct?
Yes.
We may be able to discuss it
Is
more.
that where you want to move it to?
But there's plenty of opportunity to move these, the immediate action projects
Well, you could add an agenda item.
forward.
well, I don't know, my council chairman is really hard on me about adding items to my agenda,
Tell me about it.
especially like the night before.
Yeah.
I quit.
Do we
And
need
we
to
don't
add
have
it
a
tonight?
secretary.
Well, I don't think we need to add anything for funding at this time.
Okay.
We're still, these
Yeah, I
are
think we're-
pre-construction activities. The RFQ, as the general said,
Encompasses that.
Once I get the budget approval through, we'll advertise for that, and then we'll be on our way with maybe allocating these projects to the consultants.
Okay, good.
And if we need an emergency meeting
We can
to
do
move
that.
an item to finance in June,
Yeah.
then, you know, I'm happy to, I mean, we'd be happy, and I'm sure all of us would be happy to meet together as promptly as you all believe it's necessary, and as often as you believe it's necessary. I don't care how many times I have to fight the traffic from Baton Rouge to Gonzales, let's get this stuff done.
I think 6B is the key that we have to move on tonight. I'm going to move
Okay.
on to agenda item 6B, which is formerly agenda item number 11. It's motion directing HNTB to temporarily suspend their work on subtask 3.2, Transportation Solutions, and subtask 3.3, Transportation Master Plan Documentation, and continue focusing on the agreed-upon supplemental work order, work under subtask 2, Quick Start projects within HNTB's original task order 1, Transportation Master Plan Development. This is a no-cost amendment. The scopes of the work under the suspended subtask will not begin until such time as the Transportation Committee reinitiates the work and issues HNTB a supplement for the scope, fee, and new schedule for the completion of the Transportation Master Plan. Mike
Motion to
Enlow.
approve.
We have a motion to approve,
Second.
and we have a second by Councilman Cagnalotti. Any discussion? Any objection? So moved. Okay, moving forward to number 7, review and discussion of ordinances 19.1-19.6 of any other laws concerning the acceptance of new roads and developments into the parish system. This is brought to us by Councilman John Cagnalotti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've had some discussions with the staff. Aaron and I met with staff members, planning and zoning, and the administration. And the concern here is that for years, and I've heard it's long before my time here, but it was considered 15 years ago and even 10 years ago to address these and just look at, you know, what our procedures are for adopting roads and streets into the parish maintenance program. And with that in mind, we met this morning. I think our discussions were lively. They were very good. And I think the outcome was that we were going to ask the administration to research and compare what other parishes do and research what we have been doing, everybody knows we've just had unprecedented growth. And other parishes, and I've done a little research along this line, have taken measures to change the way they do that. So it's just something that I think we need to look at, and the administration's agreed to do some research on it. Ricky, Ken Dawson, and them had said they would look into it and come back to our committee next month with some options, not necessarily recommendations, but what they researched, what they found out, and what they came up with. Correct, Ricky?
Yes.
Okay, does anybody have any questions or discussion? Okay. Oh, so I hand up. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 8, transportation impact fee update. Jerome Fournier, thank you.
Cut it in half, Joe?
Saving money any way we can.
Might add, Councilmember Cagnolati, there was an article recently in the New Orleans Times-Picayune about the fastest growing parishes in the state of Louisiana. And for the past 3 years, we have been the fastest growing parish in the state. And for the last 10 years, we're only second to St. Bernard Parish, and that's because of the people moving back to St. Bernard Parish after Katrina. But we were second in that, so we have been fast growing, absolutely. Before you, I'm going to, based on the last Transportation Committee meeting, you had asked me to come back with some modifications to the program, and we looked. I had a meeting with a couple of council members who were concerned about what was being proposed, maybe a couple of modifications. So I wanted to go over some of the discussions we've had since then and let you know what we've accomplished, and with your recommendation tonight, possibly we can move this on to full council for adoption. Basically, what we've done is look at, based on the study that was done by Duncan and Associates, we have consolidated certain residential categories. We've updated the fees from the 2006 study. We've changed some categories. We've removed medical office category. They're now under general office. Medical office was one of the most expensive ones that we had before. We're now putting them under regular general office. Since the last meeting, we've provided 2 categories now for mobile homes. And we've got a mobile home category, and these are mobile homes outside of a mobile home park. They basically are trailers that lie on a single family or a single lot, all right? We've got one category for those mobile homes that are less than 1,500 square feet, and we have those that are greater than or equal to 1,500 square feet. And, I'm sorry, less than or equal to 1,500 or greater than 1,500. We've also looked at reducing the cost for mobile homes based on the longevity of a mobile home. And this is something we've researched based on our meeting with a couple of council members. And so what we've done here is look at trying to lower, we're really looking at mobile homes in the parish as kind of, I don't want to call them low-income housing, but it certainly acts that way in terms of who's purchasing these and where they're located. So we're trying to help these people as much as we can, all right? So you can see that we've reduced them quite substantially under, I'll go on the table a little bit later. What we're looking at is on the table that I just provided you. John, I'm going to put this up on the overhead. You can see that. Back up. We've basically taken the fees and we've created an East Bank and a West Bank category. And this was based on some comments from Councilmember Oliver Joseph, asking if we can look at this West Bank a little bit differently because we're trying to promote economic development on the West Bank. So we've looked at the fees. The current fees you can see under the column that says current fee, and then the updated fee at 100%. So right now, we're collecting, as an example, for a single-family detached house that's less than 2,000 square feet, $1,725. The update, and this is based on the cost of living update and everything else over that, 11-year period, it went up to $2,615 for that same land use, which is a 52% increase in the cost. What we have recommended is that we take the East Bank and we levied the cost at 1831, which is only a 6% increase. If you look at the next category, 2,000 to 3,000 square foot homes, they basically had zero increase in the cost. And that's the most common category that we're getting in the parish for a stick-built house. So we're looking at applying that. On the mobile home parks, when you look at what we're collecting now, it's $1,726. For a mobile home that's over 1,500 square feet, it would be $1,101, which is a 36% decrease. We would look at collecting $771, which would be be 55% less than what we're currently collecting. And on the West Bank, we collect $385, which would be 78% less than what the proposed range would be. So these are just the categories that we've come up with. We can look at those numbers in a little bit more detail if you'd like. Council can look at recommendations in terms of 70% on the East Bank, the 35%. Whether you want to adjust that a little bit more, we can look at that a little further. But that's the table that we would typically go by. That's if you adopt that. I wanted to talk too about the transfer of credits. This was a big issue that we talked about the last time. And right now, if we had flooded homes, we're giving them, a break on they don't pay the fee basically unless they've had an increase in the square footage. But there are some property owners that have come to the parish. The property owner was flooded in one location. They had a lot or something else in another location, so they're moving and they're building in that other location. Under the way the code's written right now, we cannot give them a break. So what we'd like to do is give them a credit, an exemption credit that they can transfer to the other property, right? And with that, they'd be exempt from the fee in as much as we can, provided they don't build an extra square footage, things of this sort. But they can transfer that credit to another lot, all right? Now, one thing we have to be careful with, we need to make sure that they're the same owner. If we're transferring the credit from one location and that they don't own to another location that they do own or something along those lines, we're going to have to be careful. So I think what we're going to have to do is look at the ownership, make sure we got approval from the owner, both old and new, to make sure that we can get that credit. Because if we do transfer the credit and somebody comes up to that old site and they start building on it, we're going to have to charge the fee at that point in time. Right? So that's something we'd like to look at, and we'll develop the things to do. Yes, sir.
My only concern with that is we're still transferring an impact from one area to another.
We are. Is
Is there a way to transfer the impact fee from one area to another?
I don't see why we couldn't. Now, a lot of these cases, they're going to be in the same area, so they'll be in the same zone. So if they're in the same zone, it's not an issue. But if they're going from like Zone B to Zone C, then yeah, that would be an issue. So I'll look into how we can do that.
No, but my thought is if they decide to build in the old homestead, that credit maybe could apply there, and the new impact goes to where they had moved.
Right.
See what I'm saying?
So in other words, what you're saying, if their old site was in Zone B, and they end up moving to Zone C, they're taking that credit from one to the other, and the money's not being exchanged between the two.
But they are bringing the traffic impact to another area, to
Right.
another zone.
Right, exactly. So we'll have to look at that one, see how we can
Just explore
make
that.
that transfer. I'll explore that one further. The other thing we talked about the last time was giving credits for subdivisions when they make improvements. And I like to, make sure that we explore that as much as we can with the development community. If they build a facility, we want to give them credit for the amount of, the cost of the facility they build, provided it's in the proper area. With that, I want to show you, we looked at the modification to the map. If I can use this microphone. When you
Got
see
that.
now, the map that you see current is the current map that we're using. And Bill, can you see that? And the modification would include this map here. You can see what we ended up doing in consultation with Councilmember Kluot was to take the area in blue that goes up to his area, up to the Amite River practically, and include that in Area B, or in Area 2. The remaining area in Area 3 would be the same. Remember in the past, this line, I think it was Highway 72, went all the way to the eastern boundary of the parish. So that was a recommendation that he had asked for.
Councilwoman Cazzo?
I think, Jerome, the purpose of that was to make sure that all of Randy's district was in the same zone.
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes. That was a request of his.
And he's the only councilman affected by that.
That's it. Yes. All right, so that's all I have in terms of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions?
I guess one question. I know that we're looking at the east and west bank, but for like the, I think it was a hotel motel, wouldn't, being commercial, they gonna build that hotel regardless, and they've been building them and on the west bank pretty rapidly, you know? Why are we gonna cut that cost there?
According to Councilmember Joseph, we wanted to promote commercial development on the west bank. So that's the rationale that I was given for it. And I will advise, though, that it would be inadvisable in consultation with our consultant on this to take a line item and start reducing certain land uses and not all the land uses within that category.
You're going by the percentage basis.
Right, exactly.
Any other questions? Do I hear a motion to move the map and the updated impact fees to the full council?
I'd say move it to them, but I wouldn't put it under consent. I'd put it where the rest of the council can be.
I think
I
that's
agree.
It's a good plan. So we have a motion to move it to them outside of the consent?
It's an
Second.
agenda item.
Yes.
Second.
Okay, so moved.
Thank you.
Thank you. And moving on to number 9, roads for discussion of acceptance into the parish maintenance system. Mr. Diallo?
We're gonna Dutchtown Metals first. Y'all wanna do them road by road?
Yes, do we have any that have any
Discrepancies?
issues? Yes.
No, both these subdivisions checked out good.
Great, thank you, good job.
Okay, Dutchtown Metals Way, 470 feet.
Motion.
Second.
There we go. A motion by Councilman Lambert. Any discussion, any objection? So moved.
The Venter Drive, 862 feet.
Motion. Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Cazzo. Any discussion, any objection? So moved.
Amsterdam Avenue, 1,050 feet.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Cagnolati. Any discussion, any objection? So moved.
Tilburg Pass, 268 feet.
So moved. Second.
A motion by Councilman Lambert. Any discussion, any objection? So moved.
Rotterdam Avenue, 1,036 feet.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Casso. Any discussion, any objection? No, so moved.
Mary pass, 505 feet.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Cavallotti. Any discussion, any objection? No, so moved.
That's a total of .79 miles in that subdivision. Okay, we'll go to Eagles Landing subdivision, second filings, Part A, third filings, Part A. Gold Eagle Drive, 1,982 feet.
Motion.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Lambert. Any discussion, any objection? None, so moved.
Eagles Eye Street, 1,000 feet.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Casso. Any discussion, any objection? None, so moved.
Eagle Perch Drive, 264 feet.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Cavallotti. Any discussion, any objection? None, so moved.
Feather Ridge, 156 feet.
Motion.
Second.
Got a motion by Councilman Lambert. Any discussion, any objection? None, so moved.
Soaring Flight Drive, 136 feet.
Motion.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Casso. Any discussion, any objection? None, so moved.
That's a total of .67 miles.
Okay, thank you very much. And moving on to the DPW report, agenda item number 12, Mike Enlow.
Okay, I'm going to briefly go through the State Highway grass cutting report, and then Tacey's going to give you an update on some of the projects that we have that have been ongoing in the parish. So, completed highways, state highways for April: Highway 22, 934, 931, 935, 431, and Highway 61. State highways that are in progress as of today: Highway 42 and Highway 429. I think after in line is going to be next is Highway 74 and Highway 30.
Okay, I'm just gonna hit on the major projects that are going on right now. First, I want to talk about St. Landry, Edenborn. They actually, the NTP was issued for today. They're mobilizing, well, they mobilized today. They're putting up their silt fence and installing their BMPs for stormwater. They should start earthwork probably by Wednesday, so hopefully we'll see some heavy work going on pretty soon. Next thing I want to talk about is the relay project. Coastal Bridge has that contract, and we gathered 6 roads. We're going to issue that as task 1. So I'm going to be meeting with them hopefully this week to develop the money amount for that task, and then they'll get going. After they get started, we're going to bid out another contract, basically an identical contract as this one, and get another contractor going. So we'll have 2 contractors working concurrently on overlay projects. So hopefully we'll see a lot of progress, within the next couple of months. The other thing I wanted to mention, Gold Place intersection improvements. I know Councilman Lambert, I talked to you about it. We were waiting on DEMCO to issue their utility certification. They finally did. I got an email today, so that project is set to advertise May 24th, and then it's going to go to bid June 21st.
Awesome.
So it is set to go. And that's really the 3 projects that I wanted to talk about. If y'all have any other questions about a project, please let me know.
I just want to add one more thing. As you all know, Highway 42, I believe, is the letting date is the 10th. It's Wednesday. We're going to see when that. We'll talk to the district guys at DOTD and see if that date is still held up or confirmed, I suppose. So.
That's all I had for my report, unless somebody has a question about a certain project.
Yes, Councilwoman Casso.
Yeah, I know we've had you all under a lot of pressure, but it is very helpful to me that when we get a DPW road report, if there is a summary of each project in our packet, as opposed to a blank piece of paper that says DPW report.
Okay.
It's just extremely helpful, and I realize you've been under a lot of pressure this last couple of weeks, so I granted pass on this
Right.
one, but in the future, it's helpful to me. I think it's helpful when I can take that home and kind of look back
Sure.
over it.
Well,
So-
in the future meetings, I'll make sure that I'll issue that, you know, in a week ahead with everything else. So this one, unfortunately, is kind of last minute that I changed, so I just wanted to hit on the major ongoing projects. So, but in the future, I will include that in your packet, for sure.
Thank you so much.
Do we have any other questions? Any more to add?
What's that?
Do you have any more to add?
No, well, the next item on the agenda is mine too, if y'all want to move forward to that.
Yes, we move forward to item, oops, John will kill me. Item number 13, approval of new signage on Duplessis Road.
Councilman Lambert asked me to look into putting no trucks allowed on Duplessis Road, because what's happening is they're getting off the interstate and taking Duplessis to get to Airline or Walmart. So in your packet, you'll see the sign that we chose. It's kind of cut off. I'm not sure
It don't look right on the paper.
what happened, but it's a 24 by 24 inch sign,
Good.
and it shows a big truck and a Ghostbuster sign
I
over
don't know if
it.
y'all travel the Duplessis Road and know how narrow it is and a lot of curves, and with the Walmart coming in, they're not taking, they're taking the shortest route coming off of 73 instead of getting off on Highland, getting on Airline or whatever, and
So I
so
would
it's been pretty bad with the trucking through
Right.
that part of the, so.
I would suggest putting one at each,
Yeah.
one at Airline Highway, one at 73, and probably one at the stop sign I think right in the middle.
In the
of
middle,
Duplessis.
correct,
So
yeah.
we'll have 3 or 4 in each direction, so, there shouldn't be any reason why they miss it.
And maybe get some enforcement out there for the first couple of months.
Right.
Yeah, not to have to be given a ticket, but just letting people know we're doing it. Does that include pickup trucks?
No, that's the thing.
Just
Well,
messing
we
with you.
had to.
Does that include Ford and Toyota or just Dodge?
We-
What about a really
yeah.
fancy Denali?
We had to choose one that didn't, we couldn't put a weight limit because that would restrict buses. And they have a lot of school buses on that road. So we had to pick one that just restricted 18-wheelers, big trucks.
Yes.
So, no, pickup trucks are fine.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman. We need a motion?
I'll be happy to second that, and I was gonna tell you, I couldn't figure out what this was.
No, I don't know how it printed, why she printed it out like that, but.
Lego piece, like-
Well, Terry said, well, it's
I can-
upside down.
I think I did have it upside down, so I thought it was a piece of Lego.
I actually have it up on my computer if you want me to show you.
No, that's good. I've seen them before, like,
Now,
that we,
I think we have a motion and a second. Any objection? No. Any discussion? No. So moved. Item number 14, adjournment.
Move we adjourn.
second.
Motion to adjourn, so moved.